Have you ever found yourself doing everything for someone you love? Being supportive, helping them heal, helping them figure out their life, cheering them on, showing up for them again and again and again. You're thoughtful, you're attentive, you remember what matters to them the most. You give and you give and you give. And then one day, something shifts. You feel resentful, exhausted, even quietly, or maybe not so quietly, maybe furiously. And some version of this thought moves through your mind. I do so much and get nothing in return. He doesn't appreciate me. If this feels familiar, if you've been in that place, this episode is for you. Because overgiving in relationships, it usually has nothing to do with generosity or how good of a person you are, but it has everything to do with survival. Yes, survival. And most of the time, it's rooted in a nervous system that learned something very early in life. I have to earn love. Today, we're going deep to answer the question, why do I overgive in relationships? Okay. So I'm Amanda. I'm a trauma informed, certified sex love and relationship coach. And for many years, I was deeply disconnected from pleasure, from my body. And I used to find myself in relationships that were void of real intimacy and real true love as well. And so I know what it feels like to overgive, thinking that I am showing love somehow. Now, as a coach, I help women reconnect to pleasure, feel safe in their bodies, drop into unconditional self love, and create deeply intimate partnerships, the kind where you don't have to shrink or perform or earn your place or earn love. That's the work that I do. And so, this pattern about overgiving in relationships is very common. And it's also very misunderstood because overgiving looks like love. It looks like devotion. It looks like caring. It looks like strength. But underneath it, if we're being truly honest, there's often something else entirely. Let's talk about what this is. So let me paint a picture. She texts first, always. She picks up the emotional slack, always. She remembers his mother's birthday, notices when he's stressed out, even before he notices that he's stressed out. And she adjusts her energy to meet his mood. She sends some job listings if he's looking for employment. She helps him process his childhood wounds. She brings dinner over or cooks dinner at his house. She gives and gives and gives. And so, like I said, it feels like love, but here's what I want you to consider. What if underneath all that giving, there's an anxiety that won't quite settle? A quiet, relentless monitoring of the situation. And this monitoring is saying, am I doing enough? Is he still here? Does he still want me? Am I still valuable enough to keep? The monitoring, the hypervigilance, it's not love. That is a nervous system on alert. That is a nervous system on alert. And that giving is not generosity. It's not generosity flowing from fullness. It's a strategy, a deeply unconscious, completely understandable strategy designed to secure the connection and prevent abandonment. The problem is it works until it doesn't. Eventually, the body can't sustain it. Eventually, resentment is going to move into the space because if you've been pouring from an empty cup, into someone who probably didn't even ask for it. Eventually, the anger is going to surface because usually there's no reciprocity of this level of caring and devotion, what it looks like devotion. There's no reciprocity. And so this woman, what she's doing, she's left wondering, why do I keep ending up here? Because it's probably not her first time in this particular space. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. I know this pattern because I lived it for years, and especially in certain relationships. When I thought the man was just really high value person, or he was considered a good catch, I performed love. I would show up as the emotionally attuned partner, the supporter, the encourager, the one who could truly see him, and the one who will become his everything, or I thought so anyway. And I will become something like an anchor for this man. And I told myself a beautiful story about it. I told myself I was just a deeply loving person, that I was generous, that I was good at holding space. And part of that is true, and it was true. But here's what is also true: underneath all of that giving, there was a hope that I could didn't even dare name. I could barely name. A hope that if I had loved hard enough and if I was supportive enough, valuable enough to him, or even irreplaceable enough, then finally I would be placed on a pedestal. I would be placed on this pedestal and worshiped, and I would finally be chosen fully, completely, and without any question. That never happened. And what did happen was this: I became exhausted. I became resentful in ways that I didn't even know how to explain. And because from the outside, I had chosen all of this. And then the giving started to feel disingenuous because I was starting to see it clearly. It wasn't giving freely from myself, it was conditional. It was a conditional giving. And even if that condition was invisible to me, there was a hidden contract between or just underneath that generosity. And this contract said, I will pour into you, and eventually you will recognize my worth and give me what I need. But I never said that out loud. And so it never got negotiated. And so this never got met. This desire, this need, it never got met. And that's a trap because it was a hidden contract, because my partner had no idea about what I had, developed this contract. He had no idea about this contract. Okay. So that's the trap of the hidden contract. When I began doing somatic healing, nervous system work, I started tracing this pattern backwards. And what I found was that it didn't begin with any man. It began in my family of origin. Growing up, one of the primary ways I received warmth, praise, and closeness was through performance, good grades, achievement, being impressive, being smart. So my nervous system made a very logical and very understandable connection. When I perform well, I receive love. And that became the template, not consciously, not as a decision, but as a deeply embedded nervous system belief. I believe that love was something that you earn. You have to earn love. It couldn't just be given to you just because. Okay. And it couldn't be given to you simply because you exist. And it's something that doesn't even belong to you inherently. It was something that You produce for yourself. You produce for yourself based on performance. So now here's what's important to understand. This wasn't a failure on the part of my parents. It wasn't a failure of showing me what real love was. Most of the time, these templates form not because our caregivers were cruel, they did not mean any harm, but they're just human. And because they were doing the best that they could with their own unhealed patterns. Because families have their own unspoken languages of love and approval. But I was a child and I didn't know any of that. My nervous system learned that what produces connection and what doesn't produce connection, and what keeps you safe or kept me safe, included in being chosen and the risk of losing those things. Okay. My nervous system was just doing all of these things underneath the surface and learning from my environment. And I learned to build strategies around that understanding. So I built these strategies around that understanding of performance equals love, earning things equals love. Okay. And so for me, that was performance. For you, it might be something different. It could be keeping the peace, always being the good girl, the good one. Or it could be being needed, making yourself indispensable, or being the strong one, never showing any kind of weakness. These are all versions of I am not enough simply as I am. Different versions of saying that. And saying that I have to do something to deserve love. And without realizing it, we carry these blueprints and these strategies straight into adulthood, into our partnerships. And that's where they show up the strongest in our romantic partnerships. We bring them into our friendships, and we just bring them into the way we move through the world. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the nervous system science. So let's talk about what's actually happening in your body, because this isn't just psychological, it is physiological. So when your nervous system learned early on that love was conditional, that connection required performance, it filed away that as a truth for survival. So that is the new truth for survival when you're a child. It's not a story, it is a fact, because it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's what you believe to be true. So it became a fact. And the nervous system doesn't forget its survival truths easily. So when you enter into a relationship as an adult, your nervous system isn't operating from right now, this present moment. The nervous system is operating from the past. The past. Okay. So, and it's scanning, the nervous system is scanning below your awareness for any signal that the connection might be at risk. There's some kind of a threat to this connection that you have with this other person. And when it detects that signal or even anticipates, it activates. And overgiving is one of the ways that activation expresses itself. It is the nervous system saying, quick, do something, be more valuable, give more, secure the bond. This is why you can know intellectually that you give too much and still find yourself doing it again and again and again. This is why you can tell yourself you're going to pull back and not be this overgiving person and feel an almost physical anxiety when you try to pull back. It doesn't feel good. It's very difficult to pull back. Okay. And this is why receiving, for the people who are overgivers, often receiving can feel genuinely uncomfortable. And this is why rest can feel unsafe, why setting a boundary can feel like you're risking the entire relationship. Because in your body's older, deeper logic, stopping equals abandonment. And I want you to sit with that for a moment because it's important. It's not weakness, it's not dysfunction, it's not a character flaw. It's a nervous system doing exactly what it was supposed to do. A nervous system that was protecting you from what it learned was the greatest threat: losing love. The problem isn't the strategy. The strategy is actually quite brilliant for once. It worked at one time. The problem is that you're an adult now. The problem is that the strategy is running your life without your permission. The problem is that it's costing you deeply, and it doesn't have to cost you. We cannot expect people to honor agreements that they never agreed to or didn't even know about. And we cannot build real intimacy on a foundation of self abandonment. Real intimacy, the kind that is actually nourishing, actually safe, actually sustaining, cannot be built on performance. It cannot be built on making yourself so valuable that someone will be foolish to leave, because that is not intimacy. That is a transaction. And what you deserve, what you actually desire at the deepest level, is not a transaction. It's being chosen freely as you are for your true self. So if you're recognizing this in yourself, if you're seeing this pattern clearly, maybe for the first time, I want you to know this is exactly the kind of work I do with women one on one. I offer something called the Relationship Reset Session. This is a 2-hour deep dive session, just the two of us, me and you, where we start to gently and very intentionally explore the patterns underneath your relationships. We look at the overgiving, if you're one of those people, the people pleasing, the self abandonment, the fear, the hypervigilance. There are so many ways your nervous system learned to seek love and connection, and how those patterns are often they're playing out right now in real time in your life and in your relationships, all of your relationships, not just the romantic ones. Together in this session, we'll begin to understand why you keep ending up in some of these same dynamics, what your body learned about love, how your nervous system responds to intimacy. Yeah, me, for myself, I had a real issue with intimacy. It was so scary for me. And then we understand and we get at where healing can actually begin. How can you actually begin to heal? Because this session is not about fixing you, because you are not broken. It's about finally beginning to witness the fullness of your patterns and beginning to find your way back to yourself. Because I sincerely want to work with a lot of women, as many women as possible who want to have this work. And I want it to be accessible. I work with women from different backgrounds, financial realities, different life circumstances, and I want them to be able to have this kind of healing. So I've intentionally priced this with that in mind. If this is calling to you, the link is in the description of this video, and I'll share a QR code at the end of the video as well. So now let's keep going. Okay. I also want to be honest about something else that you may think is the answer to your overgiving. Healing this pattern is not about deciding to give less. That is not the answer. Telling yourself, oh, I'm just going to stop doing all these things. Okay, it might sound good for a moment in your head, but this is not a willpower problem. It's not solved by reading a book about boundaries, and you don't white knuckle it your way through this kind of discomfort because the pattern is not in your mind. It is in your body. It is in your nervous system. That's where this pattern lives. And also, that is where the healing happens too. So, what does that mean in practice? It means learning to recognize the anxiety that lives underneath the giving, not shaming, not pushing it away, but getting curious about it, getting curious. And what is this anxious urge to give actually protecting you from? So, getting curious about that and asking yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I stopped overgiving? Ooh, that sounds easy, but that can be really uncomfortable, you all. Okay. And sitting with these feelings that surface when you do, it a lot shows up. There's a fear, guilt. There's almost a physical pull to go back into the old pattern because it's just easier. Because when we're comfortable we're comfortable with something, we recognize it, and we don't want to change. You know, our nervous systems, it's challenging to change. It means slowly learning, slowly in your body, not just your mind, that you are safe and that you're worthy and that you don't have to perform to get love, to receive love. And you're not going to lose love by simply being yourself. And you don't have to earn your place in anyone's life. And here's what I've seen happen again and again when a woman begins to do this work. She becomes less available and more attractive, bringing in things into her life. Not because she's playing games, but because she's finally operating from her actual self, from her actual desires, from her actual energy. She stops being a mirror for everyone else who may want her to be, and starts being a person with her own interior, her own needs, her own edges, and real connection, the kind worth having, is drawn to that, is magnetized to that. Because real intimacy is not built between a giver and a taker. It is built between two whole people. Okay, so now we're going to end with our somatic practice. Okay, so if you're in a place where you can sit still for a few moments, please join me. And I invite you to stay with me here. Or if you can't sit for a few moments, that's fine. You'll come back to the video later. I want you to gently place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And just notice your breath. Just going to notice your breath. You don't need to change your breath. You don't need to, to do anything. Just notice it. You don't need to make it deeper or slower. And feel the weight of your hands and feel the warmth on your heart. Now, I want you to ask yourself, gently, without any pressure, what am I afraid would happen if I stopped overgiving? Don't think your way to an answer. Let your body respond. Feel the sensations in your body for your answer. Maybe there's a tightness in your chest. Maybe there's a warmth in your legs. Maybe there's a drop in your stomach. Maybe there's sadness. Maybe there's grief. Maybe there's anxiousness. Just let it be there. You don't have to fix it right now. And now, as slowly as it feels right for you, bring your awareness back to your hands. Back to your hands. The warmth, the weight of your hands, the steadiness of your own touch. And just feel that for a moment. And when you're ready, softly say these words to yourself or out loud if you can. I do not have to perform for love. My worth is not determined by what I give. I am already so worthy of care, of love, of connection. I am enough exactly as I am. And just notice. Notice what your body does with those words. Maybe there's a resistance. Maybe there's relief. Maybe there's a quiet ache because part of you needed to hear that for a very long time. Whatever is there is welcome. So now this is where healing begins, not in a realization, not in a decision, but in these small, quiet moments when the nervous system begins to learn a new truth. I am safe as I am. Love does not require my exhaustion. I can rest. I can receive. I can simply be. And that is the practice. That's our somatic practice. And if this episode touched something in you, I'm glad. That recognition is the beginning of something. I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel because we go deep here consistently. Every episode is an invitation to understand yourself more fully, your nervous system, your patterns, and your capacity for love. And if you're ready to begin understanding these patterns in your own life, the overgiving, the emotional exhaustion, that the dynamics that keep repeating, I invite you to book a relationship reset session with me. The QR code should be on the screen, and the link is also going to be in the description below. Because these patterns are not who you are, they are adaptations, brilliant adaptations, understandable adaptations that were formed to protect you. And they can be gently and compassionately understood. And they can heal. So I'll see you in the next episode of Ask Amanda, Love, Intimacy, and the Nervous System. Thank you.